MassMotion now provides users with tools to create dynamic agent activity and sophisticated process simulation, all within the MassMotion interface. Let's start by looking at a simple ticketing scenario. First, we'll look at setting up the process chains, which will allow agents to queue up in this area and then be processed at the ticketing counters in this area. And in the second part, we'll take a look at the logic which will govern how the agents will move through the scene and through those process chains. Because we've got a ticketing scenario and we're going to be dealing with passenger processing, we're first going to create a few agent tokens that we can assign later on to the agents that will help govern how the agents will move through this scene. So we'll create the first one and we'll call that the economy token. We'll create a second one which is a business token. And we're going to create a third one, which is a boarding pass token. And we'll come back to these tokens later. In terms of setting up the actual process area of the simulation, the first thing that we need to do is create some server objects. Server objects can be created either by going to the Scene tab and clicking on Server, or by right-clicking and saying Create Here Server. So what I'm going to do is move these servers into place by selecting them and then pressing V to bring up the Translate tool. So we'll put the first one there, and then space to go back to Object Select Mode, and V to move that one into place there. So the one which is selected is going to become our business class accumulator queue. We're going to create an economy accumulator queue in this area, and this object here is going to become one of our ticketing positions. So to adjust the size of this, because it's a bit big at the moment, I'm going to select it and press T, or you can go up here to the vertex select mode, and I'm going to choose the green end, which is the entry end of a server. The blue end is always the processing and exiting end of a server. And what I'm going to do is just move the entry port, or the entry side of the server, a little bit closer to the exit side, so we have a very short queue, because we're only expecting one person to ever be there. The purple colored parts of servers are there to define the space that the agents will queue in. And so in this case, what we'll have at the ticketing counters, we'll only ever have one person, but we may have a simple lineup of people here at the business class accumulator queue. And for the economy queue, because we expect there to be more people, we'll actually have to have a more complicated shape. So let's look at how we'll develop that. First, I'm just going to select this existing business queue, and I'm going to press Control D, and that will have duplicated that object, and now I can just press V and then move that new server object into place. Now, to create the more complex economy accumulator queue shape, what I'm going to do is first go into the vertex select mode again and adjust the position of the entry port. And then what you can do to create the additional polyline geometry that you need here is you can either go to this button, which is Grow Selected Faces or Edges, or press G, and that allows you to grow that edge, a new edge on the polyline. And as you continue to press G, and with your translate axes up, you'll see that the arrows double up, indicating that this is going to be not just a translate move, but also a growth move. And we continue to do that until we have the geometry that we need to define our economy accumulator queue. The last step before we finish part one is we're going to finish up the ticketing positions here and then connect all of the different servers together such that they form a process chain. So again, what I'm going to do is just select the existing object, the existing server here, and press Control D, and I'm going to move that into position, and then Control D, and move, Control D, and move. So now we have all of our servers in place, and we need to connect them to each other and set up some basic rules for how the agents are going to move through this process chain. So to actually develop a process chain that uses the servers in our scene, we go to Edit Process Chains, or press Q, and we're basically going to do two things here. One is that we're going to connect the two imports of our accumulator queues to each other, such that we will be able to assign all the agents that are going to the ticketing counter to go to one place where they will then be split by class. So we can click on the Connect button here, and that creates a new dispatch object. And the dispatch objects exist just to manage the flow of agents from one area, from one part of a process chain to another. I'm also going to rename this one so that this is our check-in queues. Then I'm going to go over to this side and select the imports of our ticketing servers and the outports of our accumulator servers. I can right-click on that as well to connect them, and again it's created a dispatch in between those two sets of ports. Finally, we do want to have some rules about who uses what. So I'm going to press spacebar or Q to get out of the process chain mode, and then I'm going to go in and edit the properties of some of these servers. So this server, for example, call it the business queue, and we want this one to require the business class token. Likewise, we want the economy queue to require the economy token. And what this will do is ensure that when agents are sent to this dispatch, they will automatically be split by the token that they're holding for business and economy. At the ticketing counters, we want to do something slightly different. So we want this first position to prefer the business class passengers, such that if there are both economy and business class passengers waiting, this one will take the business class passenger regardless. And then for the other three positions, we're going to do the reverse, such that these will prefer the economy class token. And then finally, for what we'll do is just take an overview of what we've created here, and we can see that we now have a process chain which starts at this dispatch out here on the floor. We'll separate the agents into business and economy queues and then process them based on preference here at the counters. In part 2, we're going to take a look at the logic that will govern how the agents are created and sent to these places, and then what happens when they're done being processed. Thank you.